Kalen stood on the edge of the neutral platform, his breath shallow, his heart loud in his chest. The air here was thin, recycled, tasting of metal and old fear. Around him, Scifi guards watched from a distance, their faces unreadable, their weapons hidden but ready. They had not stopped him. Not because they agreed, but because they were curious. His words had spread farther than anyone expected. Ships that once flew only for war now carried copies of his writings in their data cores. Young Scifi whispered about Mars and dragons and seeds that grew in ash. The Dominion could not silence this tide. So they watched. And waited. Then the signal came. A small human vessel, no larger than a scout craft, drifted into the zone. No weapons lit, no shields raised. Just a single ship, painted white with green vines curling along its hull. It bore no flag, no insignia, only a symbol on its side, a dragon curled around a sprouting seed. The ramp lowered slowly, and she stepped out. Lydia. She wore the same gray coat, though it was worn now at the elbows, patched with cloth of many colors. Her hair was longer, tied back with a strip of blue fabric. Her eyes were tired but clear, and behind her Ember emerged, not as a weapon, not as a shadow, but as a companion. The dragon's scales gleamed softly in the station lights. Its wings folded like a cloak. It did not growl. It did not glare. It simply looked at the gathered Scifi with calm, ancient eyes. Kalen's legs nearly gave out. He had imagined this moment 1,000 times. He thought he would speak first, bow, maybe even kneel. But when she saw him, Lydia smiled. Not a grand smile, not a triumphant one. Just a quiet, knowing smile like she had been expecting him all along. She walked toward him, alone. The Scifi guards tensed but did not move. Ember stayed by the ship, watching the stars. When she reached Kalen, she did not speak of war. She did not mention Helios Ring or the Veilbreaker or the fleets that vanished. She simply held out her hand. In it was a small seed, smooth and dark, wrapped in a leaf. "Plant it where your dead lie," she said softly. Kalen stared at the seed. It felt warm, as if it held sunlight inside. He looked up at her, his voice barely a whisper. "Why?" "Because memory should not be buried," she said. "It should grow." Around them, silence fell. Not the cold silence of fear, but the soft silence of awe. Scifi, who had only known war, watched a human woman offer a seed to their broken exile, and he accepted it not with shame, but with reverence. In that moment, something shifted, not in treaties or borders, but in hearts. A young Scifi guard stepped forward hesitantly. "Will it grow here?" he asked, his voice rough with disuse. Lydia turned to him. "It will grow wherever someone cares for it." More Scifi came closer. Not as soldiers, but as people. They asked about the garden on Mars, about the boy who learned to speak again, about the music that played in the ruins. Lydia answered each one, not with pride, but with patience. Ember padded over, sitting calmly as a Scifi child, barely older than a hatchling, reached out a trembling hand. The dragon lowered its head, letting the child touch its snout. The child laughed, a sound no one on that platform had heard in years. Kalen watched it all, the seed cradled in his good hand. He understood now. This was not surrender. This was invitation. The humans were not asking for peace, they were offering a new way to live. A way where loss was not erased but honored, where enemies could become neighbors, where even the deepest wounds could bloom. Later, as the human ship prepared to leave, Lydia turned to Kalen one last time. "You told the truth," she said. "That is rare. And brave." "I only saw what was there," he replied. "Most do not look," she said. Then she placed a hand on his ruined arm. Warmth spread through him, not healing the flesh but easing the pain inside. "Keep speaking." "The garden needs more hands." She boarded the ship. Ember followed, casting one last glance at the Scifi before the ramp closed. The vessel lifted gently, turning toward the stars without a sound. Kalen did not return to exile. He walked to the burial grounds of his fallen comrades, a place of black stone and silence. There, beneath the twin suns, he knelt and dug a small hole in the hard soil. He placed the seed inside, covered it with care, and poured his water ration over it. Around him, others began to do the same. Scifi brought seeds from hidden pockets, from stolen human packets, from dreams they had almost forgotten. They planted them in rows, in circles, in patterns that looked like old constellations. No one spoke. But for the first time in generations, they wept together. Weeks later, green shoots pushed through the ash, not just on Varelli's, but on a dozen Scifi worlds. Children tended them. Elders sang to them. Soldiers laid down their weapons to water them. The Dominion did not fall in fire. It softened in green. Kalen never saw Lydia again, but he did not need to. Her work lived in every leaf, every shared meal, every lullaby sung in two tongues. The war was not over, but something new had begun. And in the quiet between stars, a dragon dreamed of gardens yet to grow. After the silence of Helios Ring, Kalen lived like a ghost among his own kind. He wandered the outer colonies, trading old data chips for food, sleeping in rusted freighters, speaking to no one. The Silthari called him broken. They were right. But in his brokenness, he found something new, a need to understand, not to conquer. One cycle, while scavenging near the neutral belt, he found a damaged human comm unit half buried in asteroid dust. It was old, its casing cracked, but its core still pulsed with faint energy. Against his better judgment, he powered it on. He expected static or maybe a distress call. Instead, he heard music, soft, slow, human music, strings and voices weaving together like hands holding in the dark. Then came words, not commands, not war chants, but a poem, about rivers returning to the sea, about wounds becoming scars, about enemies sharing bread. Kalen listened for hours, then days. The unit held more than music, it held logs. Personal logs, not from soldiers but from civilians. Teachers, farmers, doctors, all speaking of the same place, Mars. Not the red wasteland the Silthari knew, but a place of green shoots and shared meals, a place called the Garden of Broken Spears. Curiosity became obsession. Kalen began hunting for more human signals. He patched together broken transmitters, rewired stolen Silthari tech, and slowly, a picture formed. Lydia was not leading fleets. She was building something else. On Mars, in a crater shielded by ancient lava tubes, she had turned a battlefield into a sanctuary. Former human soldiers worked beside ex-Silthari prisoners, planting crops in soil mixed with ash from burned ships. Ember slept beneath a dome made of melted rifle barrels and starship hulls, now grown over with vines that bloomed silver at night. There were no guards, no walls, no weapons, only open gates and open hands. Kalen watched a recording of Lydia speaking to a young Silthari boy whose parents had died in the Europa campaign. The boy refused to speak, his eyes hollow. Lydia did not force him. She sat with him every day, showing him how to weave grass into bracelets, how to name the stars in both their tongues. After 3 weeks, the boy whispered his first word, not in anger, but in wonder. Dragon. Ember had lifted its head, blinked slowly, and nuzzled the boy's palm. The boy cried. Lydia held him without saying a word. Another log showed Lydia tending to a human veteran missing both legs. He raged at the sky, cursing the war, cursing himself for surviving. Lydia listened. Then she handed him a seed. Plant it, she said, and when it grows, you'll remember you're still part of something alive. He planted it. Weeks later, a green shoot pushed through the red soil. The man wept again, but this time his tears were quiet. Kalen saw it all, and for the first time he understood. Lydia was not a warrior. She was a healer. And her battlefield was not space or steel. It was the human heart. And the Silthari heart, too. The Dominion had called her a weapon, but she was a mirror. She showed everyone what they could be, not in victory but in loss, not in strength but in kindness. Kalen remembered his own people, how they buried their dead in sealed tombs, never speaking their names again, how they saw grief as weakness, memory as distraction. But Lydia kept memory alive. She turned pain into purpose. She made broken things grow. One night, as twin moons rose over Varelli's, Kalen made a decision. He would not hide anymore. He would not whisper in corners. He would tell the truth, not as a warning but as an offering. He began writing, not in military code but in plain Silthari script. He wrote of Lydia's garden, of Ember's quiet watch, of the boy who learned to smile again. He wrote of the music, the seeds, the shared silence between enemies. He called his work, Facing Humans in Battle Was a Nightmare. But he added something new at the end. Because they make you see yourself clearly. He smuggled copies to every outpost, every academy, every ship's library. At first, no one listened. Then, a young pilot wrote back, Is it true? Do they really plant flowers where bombs fell? Others followed. A medic asked for seed names. A scholar requested translations of human lullabies. A mother whose son died near Saturn asked if Lydia would accept a letter. Kalen answered everyone. Slowly, quietly, doubt spread through the Dominion. Not the loud doubt of rebellion, but the soft doubt of hope. What if they were wrong? What if humans were not beasts but something else entirely? The High Command tried to silence him. They burned his writings. They labeled him a traitor. But ideas once planted are hard to kill, especially when they carry the scent of blooming flowers. Kalen knew he might never see Mars. He might never meet Lydia, but he no longer needed to. Her work lived in every Silthari who questioned the war, who dreamed of peace, who dared to grieve without shame. He looked at his ruined arm again. It no longer felt like a wound. It felt like a root, something that had died so something else could grow and far away. On a red planet under a pale sun, a woman in a gray coat watered her garden, while a dragon dreamed of a galaxy where no one had to fight to be seen. The Silthari High Command could not accept defeat, not from a single human woman and her strange beast. They called it impossible. They called it illusion. They called it weakness in their own ranks. But the losses kept growing. Stations fell silent. Fleets returned broken, their crews whispering of silver mist and songs that made weapons weep. Panic spread through the Dominion like a slow poison. In their desperation, the Silthari turned to their oldest weapon, the Veilbreaker. It was not a bomb, not a beam, not even a ship. It was a thought made real. A device forged in the heart of a dead star, designed to sever psychic bonds across any distance. It had been used once before long ago, to end a civil war among their own kind. It worked by tearing apart the invisible threads that connected mind to mind. Love, loyalty, trust, all reduced to static. They believed Lydia's power came from her link to the dragon. Break that link, they reasoned, and she would be just another human. Fragile. Alone. Easy to crush. They were wrong. The Veilbreaker was deployed during the siege of Helios Ring. The Silthari gathered their strongest fleet, over 200 warships, forming a perfect sphere around the human outpost. Lydia was there. She had been tending a field of blue-flowered plants on the station's outer rim. Plants that grew only in zero gravity and human tears. Ember slept coiled around a broken antenna, its scales dull with exhaustion. They had fought for weeks without rest. The Silthari did not attack at first. They waited. Then, at the exact moment their astronomers predicted a solar flare would mask all energy readings, they activated the Veilbreaker. A pulse of pure silence spread through space. Not soundless, silence itself. It passed through metal, through bone, through thought. On every Silthari ship, the crews felt a sudden hollowness as if part of their soul had been scooped out. They smiled. It was working. On Helios Ring, Lydia looked up. Her eyes widened, not in fear but in sorrow. "They do not understand," she whispered. Ember stirred. Its eyes opened, no longer gold but black as the space between galaxies. The Veilbreaker did not break their bond. It awakened it. For years, Lydia and Ember had held back. They used only enough power to defend, to warn, to protect. They feared what might happen if they unleashed what truly lived inside them. The Veilbreaker ripped away that restraint. It did not sever their connection. It fused it into something new. Ember rose into the air, not with wings, but with will. Its body grew not in size, but in presence. It became less a creature and more a force. The silver mist that usually clung to Lydia now poured from Ember's mouth like liquid starlight. And Lydia, she did not scream. She laughed. A soft, sad laugh like rain on dry earth. Then she spoke one word. No one knew what language it was. It was not Silthari. Not human. Not even from any known world. It sounded like wind through ancient trees, like the first breath of a newborn, like the last sigh of a dying sun. And space bent. Not exploded, not shattered. Bent. As if reality itself had flinched. The Silthari fleet did not burn. They did not break apart. They simply stopped existing, not dead, not alive, erased. As if they had never been. 200 ships, 50,000 soldiers, centuries of history. Gone. Not even dust remained. Only empty space and a single echo of that impossible word. Kalen watched it all from a hidden scout vessel, far beyond the blast radius. His ship's sensors went blind. His mind reeled. He saw his commander's ship vanish, not in fire, but in quiet. One moment it was there, glowing with battle lights. The next, nothing. As if the universe had blinked and forgotten it. He tried to hail his comrades. Only static answered. Then through the static he heard it. A lullaby. The same one Lydia had sung to Ember in the ruins of Earth. It played on every channel, soft and clear, as if the void itself was singing. Kalen wept. Not from fear, but from awe. He finally understood. Lydia was not fighting a war. She was holding back an apocalypse. Every time she faced the Sylthari, she chose mercy. She chose restraint. She chose to be human even when she could be a god. But the Veilbreaker had forced her hand, and for the first time she let go. After the pulse faded, Helios' ring stood untouched. Lydia knelt again in her garden, her hands trembling. Ember curled around her, its black eyes slowly returning to gold. The dragon let out a low whine, pressing its head against her shoulder. She stroked its snout, tears falling into the blue flowers. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I tried not to." From his scout ship, Kaelin saw her look up as if she knew he was watching. She did not point. She did not threaten. She just held his gaze across the void, and in that look he saw forgiveness, and warning. He fled. Not in shame, but in duty. He had to tell the truth. Not that humans were monsters, but that they were guardians. That they carried something older than war, deeper than logic, something the Sylthari had forgotten how to see. When he returned to Dominion space, he was met with disbelief. The High Command refused to believe their fleet had vanished. They accused him of cowardice, of hallucination, of treason. They stripped him of rank, of name, of home. But Kaelin did not care. He had seen what lay beyond fear, and he would spend the rest of his life trying to make others see it too. The Veilbreaker was never used again, not because it failed, but because it succeeded too well. It showed the Sylthari the truth they could not bear, that some bonds cannot be broken, that some silences are louder than screams, that humanity was not weak, it was waiting, and if pushed too far, it would not destroy the galaxy. It would unmake it gently, like a mother tucking in a child who had stayed up too late. Kaelin often dreamed of that moment. The laugh, the word, the bending of space. In his dreams, he heard the lullaby. And sometimes, just before waking, he felt a warmth on his ruined arm, as if Ember's breath had touched him, not to burn, but to heal. He knew then that the war was never about territory or power. It was about memory, about who remembered how to care. And who had forgotten, Lydia remembered, and as long as she did, the galaxy would not fall into darkness. Not while a woman in a gray coat tended her garden, not while a small dragon dreamed of peace, not while Kaelin bore witness. Kaelin sat by the edge of the obsidian cliffs, where the wind howled like a wounded beast. His left arm still ached, though the medics had done what they could. The flesh would not regrow and the nerves would not fire, but the pain remained. A constant reminder of the woman in gray and her silent dragon. He had tried to forget. He had failed. Now he remembered, not just the battle, but what came before it. Through the haze of memory, he saw the early days of the war. The Sylthari had arrived near the Sol system with confidence. Their scouts reported a planet teeming with life but fractured by conflict. Humans fought each other over land, over faith, over words. To the Sylthari, this was proof of weakness. A species that could not unite would never stand against them. They were wrong. The first real clash happened near Mars. The Sylthari fleet moved in to claim the Red Planet as a forward base. They expected resistance from human warships, clumsy, loud, easy to destroy. Instead, they found silence. Then from the dust storms came something else. Lydia was not on any military roster. She had been a teacher once at a university on Earth. She studied ancient languages, dead scripts, forgotten songs. When the Sylthari ships appeared in orbit, her world changed. Her campus was vaporized in the first orbital strike. She survived only because she was off-world, visiting a research station on Titan. By the time she returned, there was nothing left but glass and ghosts. But Lydia did not join the military. She refused uniforms, ranks, orders. Instead, she disappeared into the ruins. There, she found something the Sylthari did not understand. Something old. Long before humans reached the stars, they had myths. Stories of magic, of dragons, of women who spoke to the wind. Most dismissed them as fantasy. But during the early days of deep space travel, strange things began to happen. Cosmic rays, dark energy, quantum echoes. Scientists called it many names. Lydia called it awakening. She began to hear voices in the static, not alien voices, but Earth voices. The whispers of rivers, the sighs of mountains, the songs of trees long cut down. And then one night in the ruins of Chicago, she met Ember. Ember was not born on Earth. It came from a failed colony on Kepler 22b, a project buried under layers of government secrecy. Scientists had tried to engineer a guardian species, part reptile, part biomachine, part something else. The project was shut down after the creatures proved too intelligent, too emotional. All were ordered destroyed, but one egg was smuggled out. It hatched in silence in the dark, waiting. When Lydia found it, it was no bigger than a cat, its scales dull, its eyes clouded with fear. She did not command it. She did not train it. She simply sat with it day after day, speaking in old tongues, singing lullabies her grandmother once sang. Slowly, Ember's eyes cleared, and one morning it spoke, not with words but with feeling, pressing its small head against her palm. Their bond grew not through technology but through something deeper. Neural resonance, human scientists later called it, two minds syncing across biology and belief. Ember could feel Lydia's sorrow, her rage, her hope, and Lydia could feel Ember's instincts, its ancient hunger for justice, its loyalty as sharp as steel. When the Syltheri attacked again, Lydia did not hide. She walked into the battlefield not as a soldier, but as a witness, and Ember walked with her. Kalen remembered the reports that trickled in after his own encounter. At the Battle of Europa, a Syltheri psionic squad tried to break human lines with mind-shatter waves. They expected panic. Instead, they found Lydia standing alone on the ice bridge. She raised her hands, not in defense but in offering. Ember coiled around her feet, humming a low, deep tone. The psionic waves did not stop, they changed. They bent around her like water around a stone. Then they turned back on their senders. 3 Syltheri commanders collapsed, their minds echoing with human lullabies they could not understand. At the rings of Saturn, Lydia did not fire a single shot. She stood on a drifting platform, eyes closed while Ember circled above like a living comet. The Syltheri ships locked weapons, ready to fire, but their systems began to glitch. Not from hacking, but from something stranger. Their own logic cores started producing poetry, lines from Shakespeare, fragments of Native American chants, verses from the Quran. The ships shut down, not broken, but confused. How could machines dream? The Syltheri High Command called her a weapon. They labeled her Project Whisper. They sent assassins, traps, void mines. None worked. Lydia did not fight to kill. She fought to reveal. Every time she faced them, she showed them something they had lost. Compassion, memory, the weight of a single life. Kalen once overheard a transmission, intercepted by a rogue Sylthari scout. It was Lydia speaking to a captured Sylthari pilot, not in anger but in sorrow. "You think we are animals because we cry," she said, "but your silence is colder than any void." The pilot, broken and bleeding, asked why she did not execute him. "Because you are not my enemy," she replied. "You are lost, and I remember what it feels like to be lost." That transmission haunted Kalen more than any battle. It was not the words but the tone. There was no pride in her voice. Only grief. And something else, patience. He began to understand. Lydia was not leading an army. She was tending a wound. The war was not her choice. But since it had come, she would meet it not with more fire, but with truth. Ember was not a pet. It was her mirror. When she felt rage, Ember's scales darkened. When she found peace, its breath cooled to mist. They moved as one, not because of commands, but because they shared the same soul. The Sylthari had no word for that kind of bond. Their society valued control, separation, clarity. Emotion was noise. Connection was risk. But Lydia and Ember proved that noise could become music and risk could become strength. Kalen remembered the day he saw footage of her on Mars. Not fighting, but planting. She knelt in red soil, placing seeds into the ground. Ember lay nearby, wings spread like a sunshade. Around them, former soldiers, human and alien, worked side by side, building shelters from scrap metal and hope. There were no flags, no ranks, only hands in the dirt. That was when Kalen knew the Syltheri had misunderstood everything. Humans did not win battles with bigger guns. They won by refusing to become monsters. Even in war, they held on to what made them human. And Lydia was the purest form of that. She did not seek revenge for her lost home. She built a new one. She did not curse the Sylthari as evil. She saw them as afraid, and fear she knew could be healed. Kalen looked down at his ruined arm. Once he saw it as shame. Now he saw it as a gift. It was the mark of meeting something greater than war, something that did not destroy but transformed. He stood slowly, the wind tugging at his tattered cloak. Far below, the exiles gathered, waiting for his next words. He would tell them about Lydia. Not as a warrior, but as a teacher. Not as a threat, but as a mirror. Because the real nightmare of facing humans in battle was not their power. It was their humanity. And in that humanity, the Sylthari saw their own emptiness. Kalen took a breath. The stars above were quiet. But somewhere in the dark between worlds, a woman and her dragon kept watch. Not with weapons, but with open hands. and that more than any fire was what terrified the galaxy. On the cracked surface of Varelli's moon, where the sky burned crimson and the air tasted of ash, Kalen sat alone. His silver armor was dull now, cracked in places, scorched black along the left arm. He had not worn it in battle for many cycles, yet he kept it close, like a ghost he could not shake. Around him the Silthari exiles whispered, but none dared approach. They knew his story. They feared it. Kalen was once a proud soldier of the Silthari Dominion, a race of tall, slender beings with skin like polished obsidian and eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. They had ruled the outer spiral for centuries, their fleet swift, their minds sharp, their weapons precise. They believed themselves unmatched. Then came the humans. Most Silthari thought humans were weak, scattered across a single blue-green world, divided by languages and borders, armed with clumsy machines and loud voices. They laughed when first contact reports described humans as emotional and illogical. To the Silthari, logic was law. Emotion was flaw. But Kalen knew better now. He remembered the day his strike team dropped onto the ice fields of Helios Ring. Their mission was simple: disable the human relay station, cut off their communications, and retreat before reinforcements arrived. It should have taken less than an hour. Instead, it became the longest night of his life. The station was quiet at first, too quiet. No alarms, no movement. Kalen's squad moved in perfect silence, their boots barely touching the frost. They found the control room empty. Screens dark, consoles cold. Then from the shadows a voice spoke. "You should not have come." It was soft, calm, almost gentle, but it froze Kalen's blood. He turned slowly. Standing in the doorway was a human woman. She wore no armor, only a long gray coat lined with silver thread. Her hair was dark, pulled back loosely, and her eyes were strange. Not just brown or green, but shifting, like light through old glass. Around her shoulders, coiled like living smoke, was a creature no bigger than a hunting hound. Its scales shimmered between red and gold, and its eyes burned with quiet intelligence. Kalen had seen dragons in Silthari myth, but never real. This one was real, and it watched him like it knew his name. The woman's name, he would later learn, was Lydia, but in that moment she was only death wrapped in stillness. "Identify yourself," Kalen ordered, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. She smiled faintly. "I'm just a linguist. Or I was before your fleet burned my university." She took one step forward. The dragon, Ember as he would come to know it, uncoiled slightly, its tail flicking like a flame in wind. Kalen raised his pulse rifle. "Surrender. You are outnumbered." Lydia tilted her head. "Am I?" Then the lights died. Not just the station lights. The very air seemed to dim, as if the stars themselves held their breath. From the vents, from the walls, from the floor, a silver mist began to rise. It moved like water, but it burned where it touched Silthari skin. Two of Kalen's squad screamed as their neural implants shorted out. Another fell, clawing at his eyes, whispering about voices in the ice. Kalen fired. The pulse bolt struck Lydia square in the chest and vanished. Not deflected, not blocked. Vanished, as if swallowed by the air around her. She didn't flinch. "Your weapons are loud," she said, "but they don't understand silence." Ember leapt. It moved faster than anything Kalen had ever seen. One moment it was on her shoulder. The next it was among his squad, a blur of fire and fang. Its breath wasn't flame. It was something worse. A white-hot ripple that didn't burn flesh but unraveled it. One soldier turned to ash before hitting the ground. Another simply stopped moving, his body intact but his mind gone, eyes wide and empty. Kalen tried to retreat, to call for extraction, but his calm was dead. The mist thickened. He could hear his own heartbeat, too loud, too fast. Then Lydia was in front of him. She didn't raise a weapon. She didn't shout. She just looked at him, and in that look, Kalen saw something he had never encountered in war. Pity. "You think you're the hunters?" she said softly. "But you walked into a den." She raised her hand. Not to strike, but to push. A wave of force, silent, invisible, slammed into Kalen's chest. His armor cracked. His ribs screamed. He flew backward through a wall, landing in the frozen waste outside. The cold bit deep, but the pain in his left arm was worse. It was blackened, numb, the skin peeling like burnt paper. He looked up. Lydia stood in the broken doorway, Ember at her side, steam rising from their breath in the icy air. She didn't follow. She didn't finish him. She just watched as he crawled away, dragging his useless arm through the snow. "Go." she said. Tell them what you saw. Maybe they'll listen. He did not understand then. He thought it was mercy. Later he realized it was a message. Kalen survived. Barely. His squad did not. The Dominion called it a tactical loss, a minor setback, but Kalen knew the truth. They had not lost a battle. They had met something beyond their understanding. In the weeks that followed, rumors spread. Other Silthari units reported similar encounters, always the same. A quiet woman, a small dragon, and a silence that killed louder than any bomb. Some said she was a weapon. Others said she was a ghost. Kalen knew she was neither. She was human, and that was the most terrifying thing of all. Because humans, he learned, did not fight for territory or power. They fought for each other, for memory, for things the Silthari had long forgotten, like grief, like hope, like the need to protect what was broken. When the Dominion branded him a coward for retreating, Kalen did not argue. He accepted exile. He came to Vareli's moon not to hide but to remember, to bear witness. Now, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in blood and gold, Kalen spoke to the wind, not for the Silthari, not for the humans, but for the truth. Facing humans in battle was a nightmare, he whispered, not because they are strong, but because they make you see what you've lost. And in the distance, far beyond the stars, a small dragon stirred in its sleep, dreaming of gardens yet to grow,